Hey, people, welcome to another episode of the Certainty Podcast. I am your host, Elizabeth Dewar Anthony, and today I have with me the amazing Margy Schaller, who has been killing it out there, not only with her own company, but also she is a founder of Sober Life Rocks. And my sobriety is the number one most consistent, most important thing in my life. And I wanted to talk with Margy about it and also about, how we as dental professionals can take care of ourselves, because how many of us are like codependent helpers, right? I want to help, the lighter side of control. And um and then I get resentful when people don't respond in the way I think they should. So I just wanted to talk with you about that because I have a feeling you have a little experience in that area. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. And it's actually Margie.
Oh my God, I'm
So
so sorry.
that's
Margie.
okay. That's okay. It's a common mistake and I'm just thrilled to be here and thank you for inviting me. Um, so yeah, you talk about the idea of we all want to be people pleasers. And I think that, everybody wants to be liked,
Hmm.
right? That's a common human experience. The challenge is how much do we like ourselves? And I
Right.
know for me, for many, many years growing up, as I did in an alcoholic household, I was just told that I was not likable.
Right.
And that pain of always striving, always wanting to be approved of and loved and
Yes.
cared about. And so I learned early on to watch very carefully for all the signals and cues that might
Yes.
get somebody to say, "Good job, Margie."
Hmm.
And so my whole identity was based on, can I figure out what's going to earn me good job, Margie?
Oh my gosh. Absolutely. And can I also figure out? I remember my dad walking in the front door and I'm sitting on the couch, and I could tell by the line between his eyes what sort of a night it was going to be. And things might start out okay, but as the evening wears on, something's going to happen. And sure
Mm-hmm.
enough, something happens at the dinner table, somebody spills something he's looking for, something that he can't find, and then all hell breaks loose, and then it's like duck and cover until it's over.
Yep.
And
And so we learn to navigate eggshells very, very well.
mm-hmm.
And there are eggshells everywhere.
Right.
And so bring it forward into my professional life. I mean, I had bosses that I kept recreating this same scenario with,
Yes,
where I was always
absolutely.
looking for their approval, always watching their cues, always. And
Mm-hmm.
so my entire life became about all of this
Mm-hmm.
because it didn't matter what was in here. I wasn't okay until you were okay.
Oh my gosh, yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this idea that I'm a good girl, I'm a people pleaser, I want to be approved of. And working with patients whose behaviors can be challenging at best, I would find myself my bottom in terms of that. I remember working on this woman, and in a periodontal office. We used to call him Dr. Feelgood because like he gave the patients Valium and nitrous and so this woman, I mean, now I understand that she had, retained oral reflexes and that she was protecting her airway. But back then I didn't understand. And I could see myself in my mind's eye punching her in the head. Like, I was so frustrated. But you can't do that. So here I am on the inside, so frustrated and really angry, and on the
Mhm.
outside trying to be good, kind, and helpful. And no wonder by the end of the day I was exhausted and resentful. And
Yep.
then I
And in
go
my
home to a
case,
husband who's as much help as, well, tits on a boar hog, as my father used to say. So so
yeah, and then in my case, I took all that frustration and I would go home and have a glass of wine.
yep.
And then it was another glass of wine. And then, it was the chase to soothe that inner schism
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and to the point where I could just not feel that anymore.
exactly. Exactly. And I my experience with drinking was, uh, I was a binge drinker.
Mm,
So, every time I got the opportunity to drink, I got drunk, right?
mm,
And some people can be a little confused as to whether or not they're really an alcoholic if they don't drink every single day. Because I absolutely had that in my mind. Because I didn't want to be an alcoholic. What are you kidding? And alcohol was the solution to my problem. Okay, it wasn't my problem. And
right.
so, but how often a person drinks alcohol doesn't have anything to do with whether or not they're an alcoholic. And it's what happens to me when I do drink. When I do drink, I can't stop. And
Yeah.
then the next day, I'm hungover, and people are mad at me because a, I acted a fool again.
Yeah.
And that,
Well,
go ahead.
what's wonderful about that is now today, the medical community now refers to it as alcohol use disorder.
Yes.
And they talk about the spectrum. And
Yes.
the spectrum is on zero is somebody who never, ever, ever drinks, never, ever wants to drink. And on the far side of the spectrum is the person who absolutely cannot stop drinking and it becomes a problem for them.
Right.
However, somewhere along that spectrum is different for every person. When does it stop serving you? And when do you start serving it?
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things about Sober Life Rocks is that we want to normalize the conversations about whether or not you drink or not,
Mm-hmm.
because we've talked to so many people who just drink because that's what everybody's doing.
Yes.
And we were out to dinner one night at a conference recently. And afterwards, one of the girls who I know really well pulled me aside. She's like, I didn't drink because you didn't drink. Not that you asked me not to, but she's like, I had a much better time. Like I was fully engaged. And so the idea that it doesn't have to be the way that we socialize. And for people who might be close on that spectrum to it becoming a problem, can
Mm-hmm.
question their relationship with alcohol and maybe choose not to drink or
Mm-hmm.
drink less.
Mm-hmm.
And that to me is the beginnings of the conversation about how do we then get back in touch with ourselves? And how do we then listen to ourselves instead of what society's pressure is telling us to do? Or how do we listen to ourselves instead of reacting to what somebody else is doing? And that kind of brings us back to where we were just talking about with those behaviors that we're trying to get other people to like us.
Yes.
When I was drinking, I didn't like me.
Mm-hmm. No, I
And
didn't like me either. That self-loathing, you know, and that comes from, so I was born on June 7th, and I figured by about June 10th, I realized that, you know what, kid, you're on your own. Okay. No, nobody's going to be there to help you. You got to pull up your little baby bootstraps and, and figure it out. So
yeah,
part of that, figure it out was this drive to be liked and
and successful.
and successful and but it's funny because so on the inside, so outwardly compliant, but in outwardly but inwardly sort of kind of rebellious and not too happy about it. Does
Oh,
that
for
make
sure.
sense?
Oh, yeah. I'm going to show you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what, oh my God. And when I got drunk, all of a sudden it was like the reverse. Like all of a sudden, I don't care what you think of me, as long as you notice
Mm-hmm.
me,
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
wanted approval, but I would settle for attention.
Yeah.
And oh, that was,
Yeah.
I was that girl. I was that girl.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. So I
So,
think when we look back now to the dental professional, one of the things that I just had the privilege of doing, Dr. Brett Kessler, the incoming president of the American Dental Association,
mhm.
he invited me and one of our members to attend something called the IDAA. It's the International Doctors of Alcoholics Anonymous.
I saw that.
Uh-huh.
I was so
And
proud of you. I was like, girl, how do I get in on that?
thank you. Well, so it is for doctors and dentists. And, Brett Kessler's really been leading the charge open about his sobriety for decades now and trying to, again, normalize the idea that it's okay if you have a problem. It's
Mm-hmm.
okay if you're on the spectrum somewhere. There is somewhere for you to go that can help.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I heard so clearly was that people who stopped before they got caught had a much, much, much easier road.
Mm-hmm.
However, it's a challenge because you don't want people to judge you. There's this huge stigma, like
There still
so.
is, even in
Oh, for sure,
2024, there's
for
still a
sure,
stigma.
for sure. And so, by having a place like the IDAA, people were able to go and just be humans, not be Doctor So and So,
Mm-hmm.
and hear each other's stories and understand that you're not alone, that you're not the only one who struggles with this.
Mm-hmm.
And for those people who are worried about, losing their practices or losing their jobs, like knowing that other people have paved the way, that there are other people who can give you guidance, who can suggest
Mm-hmm.
how you handle this in a way that you don't lose everything.
Mm-hmm.
It was just fascinating, and it was so important to know that this sort of resource exists.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're listening and if you are in that place where you're like, there's no way out,
Yes,
IDAA is a place where you can go.
that is
And
awesome.
one of the reasons that we started Sober Life Rocks was, again, specifically for professionals who want to extend their sober choices.
Mm-hmm.
What do I mean by that? You can go to AA, you can go to This Naked Mind, you can go to a myriad of ways to get sober.
Mm-hmm.
But once you're sober, then what?
Right.
Are the conversations that you are able to have at your neighborhood AA meeting as a professional things that you feel comfortable doing?
Mm-hmm.
So we as professionals have the gift of higher level problems sometimes.
Yeah.
We have the houses, we have the cars, we get to go on vacations, we have the businesses.
Mm-hmm.
And when you go to your neighborhood AA meeting, oftentimes people might hear those things and think, oh, must be nice,
Right. Yeah.
right? And
Right.
so at Sober Life Rocks, we're building a community of people who understand that, who understand you, and who want to celebrate those successes with you
Mm-hmm.
and be with you during the very real challenges that we still face as people in recovery.
Mm-hmm.
So I looked at IDAA for doctors as the sort of model
Mm-hmm.
of what we want to be for all professionals, hygienists, dentists, and
Mm-hmm.
outside of dentistry,
Mm-hmm.
accountants, lawyers, business owners, whatever the thing may be,
Mm-hmm.
as a place where you can go and celebrate the fullness of your life
Mm-hmm.
and talk about the challenges that we still all face.
I can't imagine. So, at dental conferences, what I observe is there's a pretty heavy focus on drinking. Um,
Mm-hmm.
you know, all the networking is there's an open bar and everybody's got a freaking drink in their hand. That doesn't bother me now, but in early sobriety, oh my gosh, I was I was even super conscious of like commercials on TV and why in movies and TV, everybody's drinking all the time. How come they're not drunk? How can these people just be drinking away? And and so I can't imagine trying to go to a dental conference and stay sober in early sobriety. Um, so again, I'm so happy, so grateful that you have, taken on the reins of this. It's so important.
It is. It is. Absolutely. So, what about if you are in a dental practice and you know that either your dentist or your team member is exhibiting behavior that concerns you?
You know what? I've had that experience. And what I just try to attraction rather than promotion, unless they come to me. But I always, I'm very open about my sobriety. Um, and so my behavior has to speak to what a sober life is. And if I'm acting like an idiot, this person's not going to be like, so it's, you know, I'll, I haven't had the experience of having like a bad problem though. Like if the doctor made a bad mistake because they were hungover or under the influence, that has got to be very difficult.
Mhm. And it's one of the challenges that I feel like we talked a lot about at IDAA, because in the medical world, typically practitioners are not running their own businesses. They're part of a
Right,
hospital system or a medical system.
right.
But in dentistry, still many
Yep,
people are sole practitioners.
yep.
And if you're a hygienist or a dental assistant and you see that your doctor is not doing well,
Hmm.
it's very hard because you're worried about the whole business going down
Right.
and losing your own job. So this is one of the things that we talked about a lot. And the wellness committees in each state do have ways that you can call in and have those discussions and
Hmm.
try to intervene before those mistakes are made.
Yeah. Oh, talk about a rock and a hard place,
It's a
right? Because then,
difficult
yeah,
place.
especially, if I'm an approval seeker, the last thing I want to do is, get somebody mad at me. But that, and denial, right? But there can be like group denial. I mean, you can have, the whole
Mhm.
office is in denial of the doctor's impairment and, or the other, whoever's impairment. And, that can be because denial, right? You don't know till you know, right? Until somebody
Yep.
like all of a sudden raises the curtain. Everybody's kind of like
Yeah.
la la la.
Yeah. And on the other hand, we can't ethically not say something if it's a problem. But on the other hand, what constitutes a problem?
Right. And the high, so, I have a very high tolerance for inappropriate, for, unacceptable circumstances. We both do. From growing up, we learned how to survive in unsurvivable
Yeah.
circumstances.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah. It's tricky.
it is
It
true.
is tricky. And this is one of the reasons why we're really trying to normalize the conversations. That a doctor could go to a hygienist, or hygienist could go to a doctor and say, I don't know what your life is. I don't know what your stresses are. I don't know what's going on, but I have some concerns about these things that I'm observing.
Hmm.
And I just want to let you know.
Wow. That that would take tremendous courage.
It sure would.
Well, and
But
I
better
was
than better than waiting until the disaster actually
right,
does strike.
right, better than waiting till there's a DWI or some other sort of
Patient problem.
right.
Yeah.
So would would a person who is not, say, in recovery, would they have the courage to do that? Maybe more. I don't know. There's this assumption that like everybody else out there like knows how to do these things, and that's actually not altogether true.
No, it's not. Now, the other possibility is, again, not to say anything to the person, but just call the wellness committee
Hmm.
at the state level and say, I don't know what to do, and
Hmm.
get guidance from them, because they're equipped to know. But then you run the risk of the doctor really having some challenges if you didn't come to them first.
Yeah,
Yeah.
rock in a hard place.
Yeah. Now, the other thing that I wanted to mention, though, is that hygienists in particular are in the very best position to be there for their patients.
Hmm.
And if they know of a patient who is either in recovery or maybe having challenges with their alcohol, as you can see in their mouth, like
Mm-hmm.
this is the opportunity to say, hey, this is what I'm observing.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever looked at your relationship with alcohol?
Mm-hmm.
It's a very non-judgmental way to say that.
Yes, I've had that go both ways. I've had a patient who ended up being sober when he came back in 2 weeks. And then I had a woman call back to the front desk and complain. So, you
Yeah,
know,
of course.
and
Makes perfect sense to me. If I was
right,
in those shoes as a patient, I would have complained too. How
what?
dare they?
Who does she think she is?
Yeah. See somebody who made some observations about what they're seeing in my mouth and asked me a question.
Right, right. And God only knows. I'm sure I could have phrased it better.
Yeah.
But in the moment it was like, uh, 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 you know, I really feel like I need to say something. Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to circle back around to the whole notion of your podcast, which is that serenity.
Uh-huh.
Because I would feel remiss if I didn't talk about the change. We talked about the chaos early in our lives when we were still
Mm-hmm.
drinking, but the change that has come into my life as a result of not drinking
Mm-hmm.
has not been achieved without lots of work.
Yes.
Lots of work. I am here to say that I had to undo a lot of pre-programming.
Yes. I had to
Um,
unlearn all that stuff that we learned early in life. And when you learn stuff early in life, those are some really deep neural pathways.
and the first knee-jerk reaction is still there,
Yes,
right?
exactly. You know what? You're exactly right. Even after many years, it's still so.
Mm-hmm,
But now,
mm-hmm.
we both have a little bit more mindfulness,
Yes.
and we can take a pause and go to the second reaction.
Yeah, absolutely. And so today, obviously, I want you to like me, right? That
Ah,
still
right,
doesn't
right.
go away.
Oh,
But it comes from a place of I already like me,
yes,
and I want you to like me,
right. Well, I do, of
which
course.
is a whole different shift. Oh,
Right.
thanks.
Well, and I want validation too. I want I started this podcast to get the idea out there to my fellow professionals that these patients that come in and drive you crazy that you rant about in Facebook groups, there's a good reason that they are acting the way they're acting. And it's based in fear, and that fear is they can't breathe.
Mm-hmm.
And when you understand that and you know what to look for, you can be proactive. My whole life I was reactive. I didn't, everything was, and this is what we learned at the beginning, right? Wait, walk on eggshells, react. Walk on eggshells, react. And then all of a sudden, oh, everything's fine. Nothing bad happened here. And then it's back to the eggshells. So rather than waiting for these people to come in, seeing their name on the schedule, and now what I teach the people that come to this course is when you look into the waiting room, you can see instantly what somebody looks like who's a mouth breather. And as you're walking them back to the room, you can listen. Can you hear them breathing? And when you look in their mouth, you see huge tori. These are all ways that you can be proactive and not have to wait for this patient to, be rude and then react to it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I found is so helpful because, I have that victim mentality. I'm the victim of these people and their rude behavior. And, but I'm not a victim today. I am not a victim today.
Do you know what's so interesting? It's almost like the skill that you learned of watching for the crease on your dad's forehead to
Yes.
see where things were going to be. Like you now see these visual cues.
Mm-hmm. it's a healthier adaptation of that skill.
Absolutely.
That's not a bad skill.
No.
And here's a great skill too: the ability to chug something down that's vile for the effect. I use it for protein drinks now.
That's awesome.
I never thought about that. Thank you for pointing that out. So yeah, using these skills that I have to, to improve rather than to, I mean, to be passive.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
I mean, I was a complete control freak
Mm-hmm.
because if I could control everything in my environment, less would go bad.
Right.
And when I got sober, all of a sudden it kept coming up into my face that people didn't love the control freak part of me.
Yeah.
So I really had to dampen that down. However, the fact is that it makes me incredibly good at my job. Being a
Yes.
project manager, being able to sort of
Mm-hmm.
see things through, being able to figure things out. So I work less on controlling people and more on harnessing those skills in my job. This is the gift of sobriety, is that
Yes,
this
harnessing those skills,
mm-hmm,
rather than screaming John Velby songs on a bar stool, I can sing today in a band and I can sing in church. I can, use my gift. I can recognize it as a gift and use it to good purpose. And that's priceless. You
yeah,
cannot put a price on that.
absolutely. And understanding which parts of that don't serve you anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. You know, I think I'm always going to be an attention addict. You know, I think it's kind of wired in. But but again, taking that and working with it and using it, for good, for the good.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. So I think that if I hear you correctly, you have a course that teaches people how to be better at observing.
Yes, it's called Roots of Dental Trauma. And I talk about what trauma is, the neurobiology of trauma. And then I talk about
Mm,
patient fear uh, as it relates to the airway. And, as a myofunctional therapist, I've learned to recognize the physical signs of a person who is a mouth breather. And once you see this, you can't not see it. So the goal is by the end of the course, the dental professionals are sitting there thinking of, oh, Mr. Jones, who I hate. Wait, Mr. Jones has a flat upper lip. Oh, wait,
mm.
Mr. Jones has forward head posture. Okay. So then the next time Mr. Jones comes to the office, instead of girding your loins, you can be a little bit more open, a little bit more empathetic, a
Mm,
little bit more patient. And that leads to a better interaction for both of you.
nice. Does that include dental trauma for just people who have been in painful dental
Yes.
situations?
So almost all patients who present to an office traumatized have been traumatized somewhere else. I
Mm-hmm.
had nursing home patients that couldn't tell me what day it was, but they could tell me about their visit to the Eastman Dental Dispensary 60, 70 years prior. So that's how
Mm-hmm.
powerful those those experiences are, and it's a post-traumatic thing. It's not just a bad memory. And PTDA, post-traumatic dental care anxiety, is a real thing. And I
I
didn't
love
make up
it,
that term,
but
but
I love it.
it's true. So I always figure I'm better off erring on the side of this patient is traumatized rather than this patient's a jerk. Maybe they are a jerk, but if I
Mm-hmm.
approach them with the thought that, okay, this person's traumatized, how can I help them? I'm My brain chemistry is in a better state to approach them than, oh, here's this jerk. And, we're both ready for a fight. It just
Mm-hmm.
never goes well. I've
No.
tried it. I've tried it. Excuse me, where do you work? Well, don't come here and tell me how to do my job. It just never doesn't go well.
No.
So yeah, that's what I've been, and I've been talking about this for over 20 years. I first started on this in like 1995 was the first time I put that all together. And
Fantastic.
it wasn't until I became a myofunctional therapist though that I plugged in the airway piece. Then it was like,
Hmm.
oh, now I get it. I knew people were afraid. I knew there was a traumatic response, but until I, and that really helped me add that extra piece to the course, which is, people need, dental professionals need to understand about the airway. And it's not just this vague concept. Are you airway? We're all airway. We're all working in the airway all day, every day. And that's really the bottom line that I want to get across to my fellow professionals is once you know these things, it makes it better for you, and you don't have to suffer. You don't have to leave the office in tears or enraged or having to go home and open a bottle of wine. You don't have to. So,
Nice. Well, as a dental patient, I would say every dentist should go and learn how to deal with traumatized patients.
well, thank you. And this is why I'm here, right? But I love talking to different people, and I wanted to talk to you especially because of our mutual being sober, and also that helps us be more focused on self-care. And that's part of my message too is, you know, how am I caring for myself?
Yeah. Well, in some way, for me, I would say Sober Life Rocks is not just for people who are in recovery, although that is, obviously our
Right,
primary thing. But we also have members who are sober-ish, which
yeah,
means that, they might drink occasionally at a wedding or,
right,
once in a while, but really drinking is not their primary thing.
right,
Or people who are sober curious. We
yeah,
have a couple of members who got excited by what we were talking about, and as a result, they are now looking at their own relationship with alcohol, and they're
yes,
still drinking some, but just not like they were, not as sort of automatically. And so we welcome everybody. We
absolutely.
are
And
here for
sobriety
you.
is, yeah, it's soundness of mind. So even if it doesn't just refer to being under the influence of alcohol. It refers to having a sound mind, and a sound mind is what we've already talked about, right? With empathy and open-mindedness and that calmness and the serenity. That's the big ingredient in a sound mind, is that serenity, that ability to go through life and not having to react to
Mhm.
every provocation.
Absolutely.
Well, my dear, you are awesome. And I
Thank
can't
you.
wait to see you at a future function. And
Absolutely.
thank you for visiting with me today.
Thank you. The honor was mine. Really, I appreciate you so much.
All right. Let me record, Steph.